so glad you came in. I've got a good one for you. This is a book Jewish families read from to guide the Passover meal. And that, on the cover, is the name of a coffee company, Maxwell House. The meal is called a Seder. The book is called a Haggadah. It holds the story, the blessings, the songs, the order of the night. And from 2009 through 2016, this same edition was used at Obama White House Seders, which creates a fairly reasonable question. How does a grocery store coffee promotion get all the way from the canned coffee aisle to the presidential table, and somehow stop looking like advertising on the way? In the 1920s, Maxwell House wanted more Jewish customers. Its advertising work was handled by Joseph Jacobs, who had experience in the Yiddish press and understood something large national brands often missed. Jewish immigrant consumers were a market worth speaking to directly, in their own language and inside their own cultural world. The popular version of what happened starts with a bean. There was a real Passover gray area around coffee. Some Ashkenazi Jews avoid a customary category of foods called kitniot during Passover, which can include beans, rice, peas, corn, and certain seeds. The details vary by community. What mattered for Maxwell House was that coffee was called a bean. A coffee bean is actually the seed inside a coffee fruit, not a legume. That naming problem helped produce one of the tidiest versions of the Maxwell House legend. The company supposedly brought in a rabbi, had the coffee bean reclassified as a berry, and suddenly Jews who had been unable to drink coffee during Passover could drink Maxwell House. That version is much too magical. Rabbi Bezalel Rosen was real. Jacobs did seek rabbinic reassurance. And by 1926, we have a Yiddish Maxwell House advertisement saying the coffee was prepared for Passover under Rosen's supervision. That ad even came with a free Yiddish booklet about making a good cup of coffee. But rabbis had already discussed coffee before Maxwell House arrived, and some had already concluded that it was fine for Passover. So Jacobs didn't change Jewish law. He found an existing uncertainty, got a reassuring answer attached to Maxwell House, and turned that answer into an advantage. Over time, the retelling has made the marketers sound more powerful than they actually were. They didn't need to be. By 1928, Maxwell House ads were doing something more ambitious than telling Jewish customers the coffee was acceptable for Passover. They were placing the coffee inside the idea of Jewish family life. One ad showed a multi-generational Jewish family around the table. Another discussed 50 years of progress for Jewish women in America, then pivoted into the modern Jewish woman's responsibility for serving her family excellent food, and, naturally, Maxwell House coffee. Ads even explained where the coffee fit into different meals. The campaign specifically targeted the women running the household and making the purchases. That matters because the Passover Seder happens in the home. If you want your brand inside that ritual, the grocery shopper isn't a minor character. She's the route in. Over a few years, the message had expanded from "this coffee is acceptable for Passover" to something much more valuable to Maxwell House. This coffee belongs at the family table. Then, in 1932, Jacobs pushed the idea one step further. Until then, the campaign had been putting Maxwell House coffee into the ritual. Now, it added the book. In April of that year, newspaper advertisements offered a modern Hebrew-English Haggadah with the purchase of Maxwell House coffee. The ads even told women to buy their coffee early so grocers would know how many copies to get. And the advertising emphasis wasn't subtle. Free, a ritual book, with your coffee. Getting the coffee approved for Passover had put Maxwell House inside the holiday. The Haggadah put a Maxwell House object directly into the ritual itself. Still, this should have been temporary. Companies give away promotional objects constantly. Most eventually reach the natural end of the promotional life cycle, which is a drawer, a basement, or the trash. These books came back to the table. And the reason is almost disappointingly practical. They were easy to get. They had Hebrew and English together. Families could get multiple matching copies. The page numbers lined up. Everyone could literally be on the same page. The book worked, and everyone around the table could follow the same version together. So people used it. Again. Then again. A child could grow up with that edition, with those page numbers, with that particular arrangement of the ritual. Later, that same person might run a Seder using another copy of the same Maxwell House edition. Sometimes families kept old copies. Sometimes they simply kept using the same familiar version. The object stayed recognizable, while the people around it changed. And somewhere in that repetition, the advertising started to disappear. The Maxwell House name stayed right there on the book. What changed was what the book meant. The free book from the coffee company could slowly become the book the family uses. Then the book the family always uses. Then, eventually, the traditional one. There's no documented year when this happened. No committee declared that the promotion had officially become a tradition. There was no single handoff. Each reuse made the commercial origin matter a little less, and the accumulated family experience matter a little more. Maxwell House and the advertising agency say more than 60 million copies have been distributed. There's no independent count confirming that number, but the scale is clearly enormous. And historians routinely describe the Maxwell House edition as one of the most familiar Haggadahs in American Jewish life. Its real power was remarkably ordinary. The books were useful. Huge numbers of matching copies were distributed over decades. Families kept reaching for them. Repetition did the rest. The company manufactured the objects. Families manufactured the meaning. A commercial origin doesn't erase the meaning that accumulated afterward. That part was created at the table, not at the advertising agency. And the longer the years accumulated, the less important Maxwell House itself became. Decades later, that same familiar book was sitting at the White House. From 2009 through 2016, guests at Obama White House Seders used Maxwell House Haggada's. By then, something that began as a grocery store giveaway could appear at the presidential table as a completely normal choice. And according to Ellie Rosenfeld, the current head of Joseph Jacobs Advertising, historic Maxwell House Haggada's were displayed at the White House, beside George Washington's 1790 letter to the Jewish congregation in Newport, Rhode Island, discussing religious liberty. George Washington and religious liberty, beside generations of little books that entered American homes because an advertising agency wanted people to buy more coffee. Rosenfeld told Moment magazine that Joseph Jacobs Advertising doesn't have a complete archive of the Haggadah, and that he's bought old Maxwell House editions on eBay. So the agency that helped put millions of these books into circulation eventually had to go online and buy pieces of its own history back from the public. There was never one moment when the advertisement became tradition. It happened a little at a time, every time the same familiar book came back to the table. The company printed the name. Families supplied the years. Still curious? Choose another strange thing before the sack opens. Like and subscribe.